everyone, so this is part 2 of the 12 Labours of Heracles. So the last one we had was the cleaning of the stables, which was a bit of a random one, but there you go. Moving on now to number 6. So next Heracles had to chase away huge man-eating bronze-beaked birds. Okay, so they had beaks made out of bronze, type of metal, and they had a particular defense technique, a bit like, in a sense, a porcupine. When that feels threatened and scared, it shoots out its spines in defense. These birds, as well as having bronze beaks and being man-eating, they had the ability to shoot out their feathers like arrows. So pretty dangerous, not any old bird by any means. So Heracles drove them from the trees by shaking a rattle, a bronze rattle, and so they took flight. And I guess because they're flying, they're not going to shoot out their feathers, are they? Because they're using them. And as they were flying, he shot them down with his arrows. Okay, so that's number 6. So recap: we've got lion, hydra, golden hind, wild boar, stables, man-eating birds with porcupine type feathers. Number 7. Okay, so his 7th labour was to capture the mighty Cretan bull from Crete. So this was an easy task apparently for Heracles, and he climbed onto it and he rode it across the sea to Greece, from Crete to Greece, and showed it to his uncle. Right, so that's number 7. So let's go through. We've got lion, hydra, hind, wild boar, stables, man-eating birds, and now the mighty bull. Number 8. Okay, so we've had man-eating birds, now we've got man-eating horses. So they were mares, female horses, and there were 4 of them, and Heracles had to capture those, which he did. So let's recap again. So we're now up to number 8. So we've got lion, hydra, hind, wild boar, stables, man-eating birds, mighty bull, and man-eating horses. Number 9. Okay. Oh, so this isn't a fashion accessory. So you might have heard about the Amazons, according to mythology, the tribe of warrior women who were strong fighters. I haven't seen Wonder Woman, but I think she's supposed to be an Amazon somewhere along the line, or something like the Amazons. Yeah, anyway, so there was the queen of the Amazons. Her name was Hippolyte. Now she wore a girdle. So a girdle is like almost like a corset that goes around your body. It's quite tight. So it was kind of part of her, what would you say? Not costume, but it's part of what she wore. So yes, it was a particularly special girdle, and I'm guessing that was a hard task because, you know, the Amazons were feared as being very fierce and strong warrior women, and to get that girdle off the Amazon queen, no less, is going to be quite a hard task. Anyway, he managed to do it. There was basically a massive fight, and he got the girdle and he brought it back to his uncle. So we're now up to number 10, and then there's 2 extra. So for his 10th labour, Heracles had to steal some red cattle, so cows that are red, but they didn't belong to anybody ordinary. No, they belonged to a monster called Geryon, who had 3 bodies. So again, a hard task, and you would have thought by now that Heracles might have thought, oh gosh, you know, isn't this enough now? But I think what this is trying to tell people is that when you have been given a mission by somebody, that it's important to see it through and to not give up, however hard things might get. So you know, a lot of these stories in Greek mythology are there for a reason. Yes, they're interesting and spectacular, but they come with a message, and perhaps the message here is one about bravery, strength, but also sort of strength in your mind to keep going even though things are getting really tough. So anyway, going back to the 10th labour, so this was the stealing red cattle that belonged to the monster Geryon, which he managed to do. Now, so at this point, Heracles thought, right, that's it, I've done my 10 labours, happy days. But then, as I mentioned earlier, there were 2 of them that the uncle decided they didn't actually count. So he said, no, sorry, you haven't done 10, you've actually only done 8, because only 8 count. So I don't know if you guessed whether you guessed which ones didn't count or not. They were this one here, the one where he had to kill the Hydra. Now that didn't count, and the reason why that one didn't count is because he had help. He had help from his nephew, if you remember, the nephew who was like cauterizing the wounds every time Heracles cut a head off. So the uncle said, no, sorry, these tasks were for you and for you alone, and my expectation is that you have to fulfill them without any help from anyone. So fair enough, Heracles thought. And the second one that didn't count was this one here of the stables, and that's not because he had help for this one. This is because, as you might remember, I mentioned he was paid at the end. So the idea is that the uncle's trying to say to Heracles, these are things that you must do yourself to pay your debt because you have done something so terrible. You have to pay your debt, and you have to do it on your own with no help from anyone, and also you have to do it with no reward. You have to do it because it is important to do it, and because it's the right thing to do. So we talk a lot about this at school, don't we, about doing things because they're the right thing to do, not necessarily because you're going to get paid for it. So yeah, quite rightly, the uncle said, yeah, I'm sorry, this is not what this is about. These labours are not about you doing tasks and then getting paid for them. This is about showing how sorry you really, really are, and showing that you are strong and you're good. So Heracles says, okay, right, fine, so give me 2 more things to do and that will make up the 10. So the final 2 were, first of all, he had to steal some golden apples here. And the golden apples belonged to the daughters of evening, and they lived in a garden beyond the sunset. And there was a serpent with 100 heads that watched over the apple tree. Heracles shot the serpent with his poisoned arrows and then stole the apples. And finally, Cerberus, you will be familiar with the story of Cerberus. He's the 3-headed dog that guards the gates of Hades, guards the underworld. So Heracles had to sort of go down into the underworld, grab Cerberus and bring it back into the normal world, but he had to do it without using any weapons, so this was his final task, and it was a pretty big one. So the story goes that he used his mighty muscles to haul the beast up to the world of the living. His uncle was satisfied, and Cerberus was sent back to where he belonged. So there you have it. The labours were complete, and Heracles was taken up to Mount Olympus, where the gods lived, and there they gave him immortality. So whereas previously he was a hero, but he was essentially a mortal who could be killed. But they decided to give him immortality, which meant that he could never be killed because of his incredible achievements. So there we are. That's the 12 labours, of which 10 only counted for Heracles, and here they are. So we got all 12 here: lion, hydra, deer, wild boar, stables, man-eating birds, bull, man-eating horses, girdle of the Amazonian queen, the red cows, the golden apples, and Cerberus. And I've put crosses next to the 2 that didn't count, that one because he had help, and that one because he was paid. So there we are. That's the story. I'll see if I can put together a Quizlet to go with this story. Yeah, so just remember what you think the message behind this story is. It's about, what was it trying to say to the Greek people? It's trying to say, if you do something terrible in your life, you can be forgiven for it, but by golly, you're going to have to work hard. It's about determination, it's about persistence, it's about never giving up. It's about showing deep inner strength, and not just physical strength, but that sense of determination to carry on. Okay, so next time I think we will perhaps look at Athena. Here she is, goddess of wisdom, amongst other things, and Apollo. Bye.